What's up guys, it's Mel from Fortin Amps, and in this video I'm going to show you 5 ways to use an overdrive. Alright, so over the years, the overdrive has been a tried and true staple part of shaping tone for country, rock, and metal. An overdrive can transform some of the cleanest to crunchiest amps to some of the highest gain beasts if you know how to dial them in. And throughout the years, we've seen so many variations of overdrives, it's hard to count. But this has made the overdrive pedal a tried and true part of rock and metal and gain, period. Since the overdrive has completely transformed the way we look at gain, I like to call them the Swiss Army knife pedals of tone. And the Hexdrive is no exception. So in this video, I'm going to show you 5 ways to use an overdrive to change and transform your amp. Firstly, I'm going to show you where to place it in your signal chain. Then I'll show you the 5 methods. Method number 1, using it for a mid-gain push tone. Method number 2, adding a channel of higher gain to your amp. Method number 3, helping your mid sit in your tone and helping that pick attack sound consistent. Method number 4, for using it for a compressed, consistent lead tone. And method number 5, and probably the most popularly used method in here, since we all play metal, cleaning up your low end for a tight and consistent and punchy tone. Alright, so enough talk, let's jump into it. Alright, so first things first, in order to know how to use an overdrive, you must know where to put the overdrive. So for me, I like to put my overdrive last before it hits my amp, but in this case, with the Tiny Terror, it doesn't have a send and return, so I'm putting it right before my Zool noise gate, so my Zool can cut off any unwanted frequencies or any unwanted noise made by the overdrive or any of my gains. So essentially, I put it after my tuners and buffers right before it hits my amp, but before any noise gates or time-based effects like reverbs and delay. Alright, so method 1 for using an overdrive is using it for like a mid-gain or pushed tone. So for instance, if you set up your amp with a certain amount of headroom, for instance like this, you get a little bit of breakup from the amp. But if you have the overdrive do most of the work, you get a really cool alternative rock tone, like this. So you can set up your overdrive like this to give you a nice tone for pop punk, alternative rock, blues, or country. Alright, so method number 2 for using an overdrive is adding an additional channel to your amp. So check this out. If you dial in an amp, for instance, with a certain amount of gain, for instance, like this, you can get a nice crunch tone. You might want to push it a little bit depending on what you're at, but you can also set your overdrive to either boost your signal or give you a nice compressed lead tone. So for instance, my channel 1 live with this single channel Tiny Terror would be like this. But if I wanted to do leads, I could hit it and go. Alright, so method number 3 for using an overdrive is helping your mid sit. In my opinion, the tone knob is probably the most useful part of an overdrive because you can control the amount of harsh frequencies going into your amp and how your amp responds to those frequencies. By dialing in the tone knob correctly with an overdrive, it can help you get a more consistent pick attack and help you sound very clear and responsive live. Alright, so for this part of the video, I'm going to be using the Sigil. Although the Sigil is a high gain amp that sounds great without an overdrive, you can still use it with one. Alright, so for instance, I'm going to show you how to dial in that overdrive to tame those mids. So this is what it sounds like before I dial in the overdrive. Sounds pretty solid, it sounds pretty consistent, but my palm mutes don't sound as tight and my pick attack sounds a little harsh. So I'm going to engage the overdrive and this is what it sounds like. So this is going to vary from guitar to amp. But for instance, if I push the tone knob all the way up, you can hear the pick attack a lot more, and it might sound a bit harsh. So I can roll back the overdrive. To get that sweet spot. So I like it a little bit back from center depending on if I want a more round tone. Or if I want a really bright tone, I'll push that tone knob up a lot more than I usually would. All right, so method number 4 for using an overdrive, getting a nice, clean, compressed lead tone. So if you haven't watched my previous video on overdrives versus boosters, you should probably do that. So if you've watched that video, you've learned that an overdrive clips. And since clipping is a form of compression, you can get a consistent lead tone. So this rounds off your dynamics. So you'll have a less dynamic, but way more responsive signal to your playing. For instance, I'm going to play softly and then harder gradually to show you what a compressed tone sounds like. You can kind of hear my guitar going sharp because I'm picking really hard. But if you push your drive on an overdrive really high, it'll start to clip the signal. And with the additional boost that you're getting from the overdrive, no matter how hard you pick, it'll sound consistently the same volume. This is great for lead playing. Anything from picking, tapping, to hammer-ons to pull-offs, but anything that needs to sound consistently up front, this is great for. So for instance, with an overdrive, here's some tapping. And here's what it sounds like without the overdrive. So method number 5, and probably the most popular way to use an overdrive, is to clean up the low end in your guitar signal to give you a very tight tone. Alright, so for palm muting and chugs, for low tune instruments like this, using an overdrive to tighten up your signal is probably the most popular way to do so. So check this out, I have a pretty high gain tone right now with my bass pushed back just a little bit to try to counteract, but this is what it sounds like with my guitar in drop A. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably back up with the gain a little bit and really push the tone knob up. And here's what it sounds like. So right now I'm going to show you how I set up my overdrive. My overdrive right now has like a generous amount of drive, but not so much that it's pushed. The level boosting the signal a little bit, and the tone pushed more towards the treble end to give me a brighter signal before it goes into the amp. And here's what it sounds without it. And with it. Alright, so let me raise the bass and let me show what this thing can do with your low end and the chugs. And with the Hexdrive on. So without it. And with it. So as you can tell, with the overdrive on and the tone pushed all the way, my pick attack comes out more consistently and it sounds a lot less muddy, even though I pushed the bass up a little bit. Alright guys, so there you have it. I hope this video gave you a better idea on how to use overdrives and helped you expand your creativity on how you can use it with your amp. And if this video gave you some inspiration on how to use that overdrive, please hit that thumbs up button, ring the bell for notifications if you haven't already to stay tuned for future videos, smash that sub button if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below on what method you would use an overdrive for, or if there's any methods that I missed. Again, my name's Mel from Fortin Amps, and I'll see you on the next one.